Ding dong bell, pussies in the well. A line we've all heard since childhood. A gentle sing-song verse about a mischievous boy and a rescued cat. But what if I told you that this innocent little rhyme is one of the oldest on record, and that its earliest version wasn't playful at all, but disturbingly bleak? Tonight, we're lifting the lid on a rhyme that has echoed through 5 centuries and following it down into a world of witchcraft trials, demonized cats, and forgotten folkloric ritual. Welcome back, Darklings. Let's revisit the most well-known version of the rhyme. Ding dong bell, pussies in the well. Who put her in? Little Johnny Thin. Who pulled her out? Little Tommy Stout. What a naughty boy was that, to try to drown poor pussy cat, who never did him any harm, but killed the mice in his father's barn. A neat little morality tale, one naughty child, one heroic child, and a cat who lives another day. But this isn't how the story began. This is the soft-edged, sanitized Victorian version, the one polished for picture books. To understand the truth of Ding Dong Bell, we need to go back far earlier, all the way to the late 1500s, and what we find there is far darker than anything you'd expect from a nursery rhyme. The earliest known record of the rhyme appears in 1580, scribbled down on a note by an English organist named John Lant, and his version is chilling. Jackie boy, ho boy, the cat is in the well, let us ring now for her knell. Ding dong bell. A knell being a funeral bell. Here there's no rescue, no redemption, just a dead cat, and a bell tolling her passing. Folklorists suggest the rhyme was likely already well known by this point, passed down orally long before Lant ever wrote it down. Even Shakespeare used the phrase ding dong bell in The Tempest and The Merchant of Venice, showing it must have been a common expression at the time to mimic the sound of a tolling bell, often one connected with death or warning. This early version may reflect a grim reality of the period, when it wasn't unusual for unwanted cats and kittens to be drowned. In an era before modern spaying and neutering, drowning was considered a practical method of pest control. But to fully understand this rhyme, we have to understand how cats were viewed in late Tudor England, and this is where things get deeply interesting. Cats held a strange, double existence. On the one hand, they were essential workers. They kept granaries, bakeries, and barns safe from mice. A good mouser could protect a family's food supply, and was quite literally a lifesaver. On the other hand, this was the age of witch trials, and cats, especially black ones, were rumoured to be familiars, demonic helpers, or even witches in disguise. In the same century that Ding Dong Bell first appeared, accused witches were being thrown into rivers and ponds in a ritual known as the ordeal by water. The belief was simple: water, being pure, rejects evil. If the woman floated, she was guilty. If she sank, she was innocent, though she often drowned long before anyone pulled her out. And in the folklore of the time, the boundary between cats and women was often blurred. Cats weren't just animals. They were thought to be a witch's familiar, an extension of her, or even a shape she could take at night. In songs, ballads, and popular tales, cats were frequently used as stand-ins for women, especially those who lived alone or outside traditional expectations. So drowning a cat wasn't only practical. In some communities it was also seen as weakening, punishing, or cleansing the woman believed to be linked to it. In a world where cats and witches were symbolically intertwined, harming one could be understood as harming the other. It's also worth noting that the rhyme specifically mentions a well, which is interesting from a folkloric perspective. On Tudor farms, unwanted kittens were usually drowned in buckets or troughs, not in wells. So the choice of a well here may not be practical, but symbolic. Across Britain and Europe, wells were commonly seen as liminal places, boundaries between the everyday world and the underworld. Many were associated with healing saints, older pagan deities, water spirits, or local legends. Archaeologically, we know that people did drop offerings into wells, coins, jewellery, tools, even animal remains, suggesting these places held ritual or spiritual significance for some communities. Now, this doesn't mean the rhyme is intentionally referring to any of that. Most likely it is simply describing a drowned cat, because such drownings sadly did occur. but the combination of a cat in a well and the tolling of a funeral bell does place the rhyme within a cultural world where wells and bells both carry deeper symbolic meanings. So while we can't claim the rhyme is secretly about ritual sacrifice or witchcraft, the imagery it uses, a well, a death knell, a drowned animal, would certainly have resonated with early listeners who lived in a world steeped in these associations. So how did we get from a death knell to the cheerful rhyme we teach toddlers today? The transformation begins in 1765 with Mother Goose's Melody, one of the earliest major printed collections of nursery rhymes. Here, the rhyme appears under the title Plato's Song. Not because Plato had anything to do with it, but because 18th century editors loved giving children's verses mock classical names to make them seem more grand. This version reads, "Ding dong bell, the cat is in the well. Who put her in? Little Johnny Green. What a naughty boy was that, to drown poor pussycat, who never did him any harm, and killed the mice in his father's barn." And beneath it, the editor adds a stern little moral: "He that injures one threatens 100. In other words, hurting a helpless creature reveals a dangerous character flaw. If you're willing to harm one innocent being, you're capable of doing worse. And this is the fascinating turning point. Earlier versions of the rhyme were simply folk songs, bleak little observations, but the 1765 printing reframes Ding Dong Bell as moral instruction. It's no longer just recounting an event, it's telling children how they ought to feel about it. By the 19th century, society's attitudes toward children and toward animals begin to change. Children's literature becomes gentler, more sentimental. And in James Orchard Halliwell's The Nursery Rhymes of England of 1843, we begin to see something new, a rescuer, in this case a dog with a long snout, who pulls the cat from the well. Later Victorian versions refine the formula. Johnny Green becomes the villain, and little Tommy Stout emerges as the brave child who saves the cat from drowning. In other versions, the culprit isn't Johnny Green at all. He appears as Johnny Thin, Johnny Lynn, or a handful of other local variants. Let me know which version you grew up with in the comments. Illustrations from this era all show the same comforting image, a boy lowering a bucket into a well, and a very much alive, dripping cat being lifted back into the daylight. The rhyme shifts from a story of cruelty to a story of wrongdoing and redemption. Another interesting shift is that, as the rhyme moves further away from the idea of the cat dying and the grim toll of a funeral knell, the word bell starts to quietly slip out of the title. In many 19th century versions, it becomes Ding Dong Dell instead, a softer echo of the original. It's a sign of how completely the rhyme had shifted, no longer about funeral bells and death, but about rescue, consequence, and kindness. In a way, Ding Dong Bell becomes one of the earliest lessons in animal kindness taught to children. It teaches empathy. You're meant to feel sorry for the cat and disapprove of the boy who hurt her. It becomes a tale of responsibility, a story that urges children not to be the wicked boy, but to be the one who saves the animal in distress. Even today, parents and teachers use the rhyme to spark conversations about treating animals gently. It's simple enough for a toddler to grasp. Cats don't like water, and it's wrong to throw one in, yet it plants the seed of caring for living things. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden history behind this nursery rhyme, wait until you hear the truth behind the grand old Duke of York. The story is far stranger than most people realise, and its origins might just surprise you. See you in a future video.